On?
You are.
Yep.
Hey, Tom. Hey, everybody.
Hey, guys. Matt.
And Kim, you don't have to remind me because I did start the recording.
Excellent. Top marks.
Well, we can start. I hereby call this public hearing to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the flag of the United States of America
and to the
and to
republic
the republic
Look for which it
for which it
stands.
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty,
with liberty
and
and
justice.
justice for all.
Thank you. First is the short-term rentals. Is that correct?
Yep.
Any members of the public wishing to be heard on the short-term rental? Now is the time to speak up. Oh, so you got a couple people coming in. Just since we have a little time, I will quickly go through it again. I know there's at least one person here who's not up to speed on it, a new resident, Emily Galloway. So the short-term rental issue came up. Actually, I've got couple months ago, I asked people to send me their thoughts on the regulation, the proposed regulations. And I could share some of those responses that I got since we have a few minutes. One of the comments was this was started by someone with a personal issue. I can tell you that's absolutely not true. I got started on this last year after I started seeing out-of-state license plates cropping up. This was when there was a strict 14-day quarantine in place. I wondered how this would be enforced, and things proceeded from there. So this was absolutely not started by anyone with a personal issue. What are the issues, someone asked, and in a nutshell, parking, capacity, property values, noise, and safety. These are the issues that have been cropping up in I guess, touristy kind of villages around the state. Lake Placid, Cooperstown, Kingston, are villages that are dealing with people buying up houses and depleting the housing stock for families and using them for commercial purposes. I mean, obviously, we're not in that category, but we're heading that way. One of the comments was off-street parking requirement is crazy. We've actually had a regulation like this in effect for 25 years when we looked at bed and breakfasts in the village. So it may be crazy, but it's been in place for 25 years. And here's an example of what is meant by parking. This particular bed and breakfast allows up to 12 guests, and there wasn't room for parking, so they were parked illegally on the street. So it certainly is a potential problem. Number 4, people should be able to do what they like. It is their homes. Don't quite know how to respond to that one, but we have zoning regulations to address that, so I guess it's kind of a moot point. If someone wants the next, and I think last comment, second to last comment was, If someone wants to do short-term rentals, they should be able to do with little or no hassle. If this results in a bad situation somewhere, then deal with that situation when it arises. Not a bad point. Dealing with issues via code enforcement / police for Airbnb renters is really not effective. Court proceedings take a long time and it takes police resources when potential problems could be addressed proactively. And we have been working quite assiduously and we believe that the restrictions will not be onerous.
Can I just add one comment to that, Gary, too?
Please.
So, I mean, the thing is with these regulations is that there have been some, relatively minor to moderate issues so far, but the whole point of putting these in, to your point, was to be more proactive with it and to notice that this is going on with municipalities across the area. And as more municipalities put into effect ordinances restricting Airbnbs, the likelihood that, if absent our regulations, that you would see more in the village is pretty high. And so, it's about responding to potential problems down the road by being sensible with some pretty sensible regulations, in my opinion.
Yeah, and we worked long and hard on it. There was a lot of discussion. I agree with what Gary just said, that the regulations are not onerous. They provide some guardrails. They don't prohibit short-term rentals. They just structure it a little more.
Yeah, and I would, if you don't mind, Gary,
Go ahead.
I would add that your rights as a landowner pretty much stops at the border of your property. And if those rights begin to inhibit or otherwise disrupt adjacent property owners, I think you've exceeded your rights as a property owner. So I think, like Heidi said, these are not horrible restrictions, that they can all be overcome by coming to the village and adhering to what we're trying to do tonight. And you can still have your Airbnb if you meet the guidelines.
I think the classic example of, limits on what you can do with your land is already in the existing code. If you have a garage and you decide to operate a mechanic shop out of your garage, that's prohibited within the village. So that clearly there are reasonable limits that are already in place for the benefit of everybody in the village in terms of what you can do with your property. And this is another example of where if something gets out of hand, that there are guardrails there to make sure that everybody has the quality of life that we've all come to expect out of the village. So
Also, I mentioned that one of the commenters spoke about if you have a home and you want to have people rent a room, you should be able to do whatever you want. There's also, the issue has come up for many people and for many of us, that there's also the possibility that homes will just be bought up and turned into mini businesses. It's not you having somebody renting a room in your home. It's more places just becoming businesses with too much parking. So I think we have to have reasonable rules in effect for what is proper and what isn't as a proactive thing. You can't really just handle an issue when it comes up if there's no rules there to handle the issue with.
Gary, I have a comment.
Yes, sir.
Please keep in mind that our code does not currently provide for this use.
Good point.
And the proposed local law allows for it with the special use permit. So we're opening it up. We're not closing it up. And we've also got a provision in here, which is fairly unusual, that acknowledges the fact that there are probably some people who are operating short-term rentals who are not aware that it's not permitted, and provides a period of time for them to, in a sense, come into compliance with the full rules. So I don't think we should look at it as a restriction, but as an opening up of allowed uses.
Good point. Welcome, Mark.
Also, Gary, when we get to the regular part of the meeting, we have a draft seeker form, and I'd like to go through the individual questions on part 2 with the board for discussion
Or
for both zoning changes, the short-term rental and the bulk regulations.
okay, is that what you sent out a while ago?
Yes,
A few days ago? Okay.
this is what Tim and I worked on together.
All right, well, let's close. Any further comments on short-term rental regulations?
Hi, Gary. This is Emily Galloway. Thanks for the background. That was really helpful. I apologize since I'm probably not up to speed, but is there a place where the proposed regulations are posted?
Oh, let's see. I think I sent them out via email before I had your email, so I can send them to you
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
if you remind me next time.
Okay. Will
Are they
do.
not- Are they not posted on our website?
I think I did, but they'll be in the local law and within, after we pass this next month also.
Well, we need to give the public access to it.
Yeah, it should be in documents. I can't go on at the same time. Well, hold on, maybe I can, hold on.
Well, I can probably email it right now.
Yeah, and it's on the website. Emily, down at the bottom of the website, there's a list of recent documents that were published, and it's one of those.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. You can close the public hearing on short-term rentals at 6:45 and open the public hearing on the table of bulk regulations amendments, which I will once again
Gary, perhaps I can speak for Peter since he's not on yet.
that would be wonderful.
And I just point out that the proposed change is that whereas we had minimum setbacks and height requirements within the districts, RV1, RV2, CB1, LCV, and M-PV, this proposed amended bulk regulations chart has differing setbacks and height requirements for the principal structure on the property and any accessory structures on that property, and those now differ.
Tom, are we talking about just one particular zone, or are we talking about all of them?
Talking about RV1, RV2, and CV1.
Okay. And in what are we doing? We're talking about rear depth and height?
Talking about front setback, side setback, rear depth, and maximum height.
Okay, so all of them, okay. I know we went through this last time and I couldn't remember. I don't have the old one, but it didn't seem like it was a major change. But you could refresh my memory if you've if you know it, what it is. Like, for example, how does the height in the proposed change in RV1 and RV2 differ from the existing bulk regulations?
I think in RV2 accessory structures, we talked about it last week at some length. It was went down to 8 feet from, I don't remember what it was, 10 maybe.
Yeah.
And I don't remember offhand, I apologize. I should have had the old ones here as well.
Tom, I had a question. We got an email today from the county. They were looking at the chart. That guy Jeff we've been working with, sending, you know, the guy who's taking the documents. And he noted that in I'm looking at CV1, the side setback is 13. He thought that was an odd number and just wanted to check.
Okay, I have no information regarding that number. I do not know where it came from.
Oh, here's Peter coming in right now.
We need to go through the seeker form with this as well during the regular meeting. And I presume Peter forgot that we're meeting before 7 o'clock and he'll be on at 7. When we get to that point, we can ask him about the 13-foot side setback number.
Yeah, I think he's trying to come in now, Gary.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just called me.
Peter, can you hear us? Peter?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
The question is this number right here, 13. Can you see my cursor moving?
Yeah,
Was that a typo or is that correct?
that's a typo.
Okay.
It should be.
That's for commercial. No, it's not a typo. It's 13. It is 13.
The county had messaged me today to ask about that. They thought it was an odd number, so.
It is an
I
odd
will-
number, but
the prime number too.
Okay. I'll let them know.
okay, but this is not what we're amending tonight. I mean, what we're looking at is on the, oh no, we have it. Okay, I take it back. That looks good. Yep,
Gave me a heart attack there, Peter.
okay. No, that's good. I'm sorry.
Peter, I asked, what were the differences in the setbacks? What are we changing them from to?
The only changes are in RV2. Well, we never had accessory structure setbacks before in the bulk, so we added that. And then in RV2, we made the accessory 3 feet and side 3 feet rear, and with a height of 8 feet. So all the accessory setbacks are brand new.
So RV1, I mean, I think we're going through this again. We went through it once before, but you know, RV1, it doesn't seem like there's a big issue with any of it. It would just be with RV2. And I think last time we spoke about this, we settled on 8 feet for the height. I know there was some questions. I think maybe Matt had a question about, he thought maybe 8 was a little too short. And then the 3 feet, given the density in RV2, 3 feet seems to be a reasonable setback, correct?
We felt so. And the reason that 8 feet for the height, it is rather short, but we felt that a typical shed is 8 feet tall. And so when people start putting up 10-foot, 12-foot sheds, it could really, even if it's 3 feet from the property line, it could hamper their neighbor. If there's not a problem with that, if the zoning board doesn't charge to go to the zoning board, you could go to the zoning board and get a variance on the 8-foot height.
That was the trade-off I think we had come to an agreement on, was
Yeah.
make it a little bit more restrictive given the density, but allow people where it makes sense to go to the zoning board for free versus having to pay the fee and get that variance if it's granted. So I think it's a good
So also a reminder at this point, I guess, I don't know whether it's on the budget, but I think we have to amend something to make the zoning board free. Wasn't there a mistake in it? What the fee was and what it's gonna be?
We don't have to, actually. I worded the resolution in a way that we can let it stand.
Okay, good.
I checked back at the old drafts, and as far back as March of 2020, the 13-foot figure was in there.
It's an odd number, but
it's a third of 40. Maybe that's where it came up. Maybe somebody said a third of 40 sounds good.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how this is going to impact anybody, because whoever's got a commercial structure in the village is already grandfathered in. So I don't see a lot of new commercial.
Well, it's funny you should say that, Tom. I was talking to Bob Clayton today and pointing out to him that the only zone commercial land in Round Lake right now he owns, and it's a number of acres, but his land is zoned commercial.
Yeah, and he's got a lot of property there.
Yeah, I forget how many acres, maybe 10 acres or something like that.
Is he RV1?
He is commercial.
Oh,
He's
okay, okay.
GV1.
Yep, okay.
But other than that, that's the only commercial property. Is really that, and across the street, the mill.
Everybody else who's
is-
operating,
With a non-conforming use.
right, there you go. Yep, everybody else is operating on non-conforming.
I think Zach's is commercial, isn't it?
You know what? I don't have the map in front of me. I don't think it is. I think it's a non-conforming use. But, and there's the motel right next door. I don't know about those two properties.
Can I backtrack just for a minute? Kim, the version of the short-term rental policy that's posted on our website is not the final version. It's version 12, and this includes the bathroom thing. And also says that we were still going to ask the planning board about the definition of a parking space. So I know that there's definitely
There are 13.
there's definitely something more than 12, and I don't have it in my own personal files, but I know that we made some changes.
Okay, I will check that tomorrow and get the right one up there.
Because the latest I have is 12 as well, but I know we discussed things like removing the bathroom, separate bathroom facilities and a couple things. So if you find the final version, if you could not only post it, but send it to the board so we all are working on, we did it so many different versions. It'd be great if we could just, because we're at the end here.
Yeah. I think what's going to happen is we're going to pass it in April. We've got to do some other things tonight, like lead agency and environmental assessment forms tonight. So that'll give us a little time to get the most recent version out to everybody.
That'd be great.
I will do that.
All right, so let's close the table of bulk regulations public hearing at 6:57 and open the regular meeting of the Round Lake Village Board. And first off, briefly, do we have any comment from the public?
Can I, Gary, can I just ask you, get off the bulk regs screen so we can see everybody again?
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
Okay, Mark Thaler is with us to walk us through the auditorium master plan. So Mark, take it away. You want me to share the screen now? Unmute. There you go.
That's great. Thank you.
Would you like me to share the screen?
Yes, please. So I just wanted to, first off, thank everyone for their time this evening. The master plan, I think, points out several things. I think, first off, it's not surprising to anyone in Round Lake. It is a tremendous structure. Both as a community asset and, you know, as an historic building and organ, you know, is really quite the treasure. We looked at a lot of different aspects of the building from an existing condition standpoint, as well as also, you know, how it could be improved from a programmatic function and accessibility functions as well. So we did come up with some additional projects that would be related to the additions to the building, changes to the building, and we came up with a set of priorities. And there were really sort of two different sets. So we had Andover, Oregon, who has been looking at the organ for many years, really perform their assessment as to what needs to be done to this piece. And, you know, first off, the organ itself is really something that has survived in large part because of the fact that it hasn't been in any sort of heated environment. It hasn't sort of dried out. It's allowed to sort of fluctuate over time. But there is, you know, a fair amount of work that needs to be done on it, certainly. And, you know, one of those things is in fact related to, you know, structural work that should really be done on the building itself. In that instance, you know, the roof truss loading over the front of the case, you know, still appears to be providing load down onto the organ itself. And that's something that should really be remedied. There are two different sort of, again, we have the organ projects and we have the building projects. Before we would be able to do the completion of the organ, we would obviously have to address the structural aspects on the building. But other than that, the work on the organ versus the work on the building can really sort of go in parallel. The work on the organ could most efficiently be done as a single project, but they certainly understand, you know, the nature of cash flow and priorities, and so they've broken down the work on the organ itself in, you know, a total of like 9 different stages. So, you know, those are all sort of set out here. So the first one, you know, that you're showing right here is really just sort of a life safety issue more than anything. It's if you ever actually went into the back of the organ and had to work on it, you know, there are walkboards that are in there where people walk to try to work on the organ. There's and those, and also adding railings and some other things is really this first project. So you know, those were sort of smaller dollar figures, but when you look at the totality of all of the work on the organ, you know, if you were to do everything right through, you know, the restoration of the case and everything, it's, you know, in the neighborhood of $1.1 to $1.2 million if you, again, do it sort of in sort of a piecemeal fashion. It is something that, you know, would likely be less expensive if there was a single major project that was able to take it on all at once. And that is also true of some of the building projects. So what we looked at in terms of the building projects, you know, the first thing was really what is already ongoing. We have the seating and the repairs to the concrete floor in the auditorium. Those are really the first couple of projects that are being addressed. And then, you know, our suggestion is that the next thing is really looking at structural stabilization. So immediate structural stabilization work really relates to both the tower and some work on the foundation, you know, as well as really taking a hard look at some of the other existing loads on the structure itself. So in terms of the roof loads, the roof is, I think, clearly under-designed from the standpoint of the size of members and so forth. When you are in the space, you know, you can clearly see, you know, bows in the purlins, you know, as they go from truss to truss. And that's simply because, you know, there are long spans, they're very short sized members. And it's something that, you know, really needs a good look. And I don't mean from the standpoint of having a, you know, this joist is cracked or that one's cracked, but the standpoint of also looking at them more holistically to determine exactly what the loads are that those individual members and the trusses themselves can take, because it's something that ultimately anything that we do in terms of making improvements on putting up additional lighting, putting up speakers, anything like that, that we're going to, you know, that we would like to potentially add, you know, up high, if we were going to actually put them onto any of the roof structure or the trusses, you know, we would have to do a very detailed investigation to make sure that, you know, the loading was such that we weren't overtaxing them even more. The roof span at the organ area where the annex is, that was added, is actually a wider span than the truss spans over the main auditorium. And there you can see there's even more bow in those purlins, in those roof purlins. So I think that is something that, in fact, actually needs additional, a more detailed investigation to sort of look at some of these things and see what some of the additional work might be. I could certainly imagine that in terms of the, actually, if you leave it right here for one moment, Gary, the view 46 there for a moment. You know, those purlins, which basically run the length of the building, you know, from truss to truss, you know, they do have this bow to them over time. And that's something that basically is, you know, you're never going to get rid of that. I mean, it's sort of permanent in the wood structure. But it may simply be that, you know, we may need to provide some additional sistering members on the sides of them, for instance. And that's really going to take, you know, a sort of in-depth structural analysis, just looking at that particular thing. It's not saying, you know, one is bad or not. It's a more holistic issue. So I just wanted to get that piece out there. The next thing was really looking at the next project was really associated with moving the restrooms and concession areas and increasing accessibility within the building. This, let's see, Gary, there should be, if you move beyond this a little bit, there's a set of plans that show the first floor plan. So this is the existing plan. The next set of plans in the report are the ones that show the concession changes.
Oh, you had it before.
Oh, keep going.
There you go, right there. Thank you. So what we were proposing as this next project was really to move the restrooms and concession area that currently are down by the stage, move them to the back of the auditorium, provide an accessible slope ramp on either side of the auditorium, along with creating sort of a tiered platform, which could be used for tables, could be used for loose seating. It could also be used for setting up anything if you're doing, you know, flea market or something like that. It provides you sort of a flat space to have vendors set up. And similarly, if you were going to be utilizing the space, you know, for any sort of a banquet, wedding reception, anything like that, it also gives you a place, you know, where you could set up there. So those are some of the things that are included in this work, as well as creating, you know, an accessible route to sort of the center of the auditorium. So you can go up the ramp and, you know, have seating in that cross aisle. You can also see where there's a couple of seats that are left out. That would be the mixing console for audio equipment. And we've added a wheelchair lift off stage right that would then allow performers access to the stage. Currently, the ramp that is located off stage right is much too steep for any sort of wheelchair access. So those were the things that were included in project number 4. Then the next thing was really technical upgrades. Dan had come up with a list of technical upgrades that he would like to see in terms of both lighting and audio equipment. I think those are things that are sort of spelled out here. One thing that I did notice in the report as I was just preparing this evening, there is actually a typo in the cost associated with that. It was a number that was carried down from project 4 to project 5. And what we actually, now that we have Dan's numbers here, or Dan's specific sort of list of requirements, I think what we will do is actually try to refine the pricing for this. In the DANDA cost estimate at the back of the report, there was actually a much higher number that was really just based on sort of rules of thumb for different performing arts venues, because that was done before we had Dan's list. But now that we have Dan's list of requirements there, we can refine that number. And then the next project was actually dressing room upgrades. The areas below the stage, at the it's really at the ground floor level. There's actually the drawings that are before this. Can you go to the ones with the addition on it, Gary?
With the additions, any idea what page?
They're pretty much, it's like page,
55.
yeah, it's right toward the end here.
Page 73 on my copy.
Oops.
Yeah, this is good. Yeah, that's great right there. So the dressing rooms as they currently exist are kind of woefully inadequate. Not only A, they're not accessible, B, they're pretty subpar, depending on how you want to use the auditorium. But if you're going to bring acts in, an upgrade of the dressing rooms is certainly warranted. And so that would be the next project. It still doesn't make them accessible, though, because of where they are. Really, the only way that you could make these accessible is by going. I think it's just a couple after this, Gary, where the addition shows up. There we go. So in this last project, which is actually 8, you can see sort of wrapping around the dressing rooms an addition, which would also provide some additional space. So again, if you're going to utilize the building for anything like the wedding receptions, those sorts of things, it gives the bride a place to, you know, get ready. You know, it provides some back of house space. It connects everything so that you can have accessibility to the dressing rooms. And there's a sketch that's a little axonometric view of how this would actually look. But one of the things that it also can do is at the tower itself, you know, as that becomes enclosed at the base, it also, you know, provides you a weather vestibule. It helps, you know, really weatherize some of the framing on the tower as well at the base, and really returns that element to what it was for many years. Really, from 1895 until the 1970s, the base of the tower had always been enclosed. There was only a few years when it was first constructed that it was open, and then it was opened again, you know, in the 1970s. And so the project right before putting the addition on, you know, we also have the exterior restoration, which includes all of the window restoration, clapboard restoration, work that's required on the roof. You know, I think those things we thought obviously are all more important than adding an addition to the building. But, you know, I think, again, some of these other issues really sort of came to the fore as we were talking about, you know, some of the work that needed to be done. So as we are putting the seating in and we're doing the floor repairs and all that, it makes sense to sort of finish that project and, you know, relocate the functions to the back of the building, get the platforms on the sides. You know, I think that's a very logical sort of next step, you know, afterwards. So all of these various pieces, if you take out the technical upgrade costs for a moment in terms of AV equipment and video, you know, the cost is in the neighborhood of 1.8 million for all the various projects. And then, you know, we would have to then add in for whatever technical upgrades in terms of theatrical upgrades I should really call out more than anything. So in terms of the projects and those sorts of things, do people have questions about that before we get into sort of grant opportunities or anything like that?
Hi, this is Paul. There's a fairly minor one right on the picture you were just on. You were on. I just happened to notice that the suggested bathrooms, it looks like the men's has larger than the women's. I think it would be the other way around, where we have some kind of bathrooms that were no longer male and female. Looks like you got spaces down the space.
Yeah, actually, just looking at the fixtures that are there, that's a misprint because the urinal belongs in the men's room.
Well, this is urinal.
They're in the, yeah.
So they should be labeled reverse.
Yeah, so
Okay.
we can fix that.
Are you comfortable with the fact that there's only the two side means of egress to the seating area? There's no egress in the back of the building?
We actually, I mean, given the distance, we're actually fine in terms of our egress capacity and our travel distance.
I think it's pretty exciting. I just want to say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the vision for sure.
Yeah, it's pretty comprehensive, and it's a little difficult to wrap your whole arms around it. But can't I, it seems like it's covering all the bases.
The one thing, simply in terms of when we begin to talk about grant opportunities, there's one that's actually coming up very quickly that could actually be quite appropriate here as a sort of next step. The Preservation League of New York State has the Preserve New York grants. They're not large grants, but they are targeted toward investigations, design services on that end, and sort of specialized investigations. And I do think that as the next step, one thing that would be very appropriate, frankly, would be to do a specific structural assessment on the roof structure. And that's something that the project for this grant, the project amount basically has to equal $10,000. If you're successful in the grant, they give you 8 of that, and the recipient basically has to come up with 2. So for something of that nature, I think you could get pretty far down the road in terms of what some of the structural capacities, look at all of those various issues, and really do not design documents, but really understand quite well what the structural capacities of individual members, how you would address some of those things. And that grant application deadline is, I believe, just about a month from now. It's April 15th, I think. But it's money that is re-granted from NISCA, and so it is money that really is mostly focused on performance venues. Is really their sort of highest priority. It can go to other things, but that's really the focus of where they're headed. So I can certainly forward that information on, and that's, I think, definitely worth your consideration. The next thing that is really worth thinking about is how you might package something for these sort of more easily funded pieces of it. So, for instance, any of the structural repairs that need to be done to the building and the exterior restoration, those are things that could easily be packaged for an environmental protection fund grant, which is part of the CFA process. Obviously last year there was no CFA round. What I've heard so far is that they are intending, I believe it's in both bills in the 2 houses, but that is something that traditionally has had a deadline generally in the July range. And if the upcoming the Preserve New York grant if it was funded, probably would be a little late, because I probably wouldn't tell you, right off the bat, it's going to be a couple of months before they tell you whether you got it or not. So there probably wouldn't be time necessarily to get, the structural report done as a backup. But there certainly is a fair amount that could be packaged if you were even ready for it this year. So, maybe it's something that you focus as, a 2022 sort of focus for the CFA, but the Environmental Protection Fund grants for historic preservation, are really a perfect opportunity to fund a bunch of these things. And we're working with a church out in Utica that we phased work such that we take maximum advantage of the grants. So unfortunately, Round Lake is a 1-to-1 match, not a 3-to-1 match, which would be nice. Depending if you were in a distressed census tract, you could actually get a 3-to-1 on an EPF match, but you're a 1-to-1 match. So if the total top grant amount is $600,000 through that particular grant, so you would have to then come up with a similar $600,000 to match that. Now, I'm working with Clinkhart Hall Arts Center out in Sharon Springs. There we also had gotten some CFA money after doing these smaller reports. So first we got these small reports done from the technical assistance grants from the Preservation League. And you are already at that point now because you have the master plan, which also has cost data in it. So you have the backup that you would need. Again, we looked at sort of phasing them. They have a project that in its totality is about $5.5 million. So they identified a phase one that was about 1.2 million. And then they went after the CFA and they got 720,000 of that. 500,000 came from the EPF grant, which was the highest that they could get for that year. And they got a $220,000 grant from Empire State Development. So Empire State Development is also a good source of funding for some of these projects as well. But once you get an EPF grant, again, if especially if you're calling it out as, a phased piece, you're much more likely to get the second grant. So this church in Utica, for instance, they did their first grant, they did a piece of their building, then they came back, put in for another piece. So they were able to get another grant for the next phase because SHPO saw the need and they basically wanted to make sure that the project, got done. So I think that those are really both things that are first and foremost grant opportunities that I think make a lot of sense. The other thing that should be looked at here, this past, well, I believe in January, they had the first round of Save America's Treasures grants that they've had in quite a number of years. Under the last administration, those were not getting funded. And so there was sort of long hiatus, but they were actually funded this year. And what we've heard is they're going to be funded in upcoming years. The Save America's Treasures Grants is a grant through the National Park Service. And because the Oregon is a National Historic Landmark, that's sort of the level that you have to be to really be competitive on those. That's really where it's sort of focused. So you could, if you were sort of individually listed as national importance on the National Register, you would be able to sort of go that route. But because it's really part of a district and it's not specifically called out at the highest level, I don't believe the Save America's Treasures would have otherwise kicked in. But because you have landmark status, I think that opens up a lot of opportunities for you on that round as well. There are other methodologies for funding some of these projects. So I know that the mayor mentioned that you do have a 501c3 set up where you can get individual philanthropic gifts sort of funneled that way. That's certainly an advantage. One thing that might have been an advantage if you were perhaps in a again, a qualifying census tract, it might have made some sense to try to go the historic tax credit route. But because you don't have the ability to go for the state credit, the federal credit in and of itself is probably not worth all of the headaches that would sort of come to play. The reason that I even mention the historic tax credit, it is something that is often used for not-for-profits that own these kind of structures. They basically create other entities that are for-profit entities. They basically get investors that come in, usually banks, that need tax credits, to offset their tax liabilities. And it's a great way of the not-for-profits funding these projects. So especially when the state credit is involved, basically 30% of your overall cost could be underwritten that way. But there's a lot of different idiosyncrasies, and I mentioned this. In fact, I was speaking with someone in the city of Cohoes just a couple days ago about the same sort of scenario, and they are in fact in a qualifying census tract, so they could make that case for the Cohoes Music Hall if they so desired, if they wanted to spin it off to a 501c3. And she rightly pointed out that they just had a problem where a building that was really central to their community, which was their community center, owned by a 501c3, ended up going into bankruptcy. And so, they didn't, so she was like, yeah, I don't think you really, if you really want to maintain control by the community, you just keep it under municipal ownership. So it sort of just really focuses you on grants and on, a capital campaign. So, you could certainly, through the getting various grants over certain years, that's certainly helpful. But if there's also, a friends group that is, creating a capital campaign that's really targeted, that's another great opportunity to also help you meet your matches for the grants. So, if you went after an EPF grant that was $600,000 and you have to match $600,000, then clearly it's something that if a friends group can help raise some of that privately, that's a huge advantage to you. So I wish I could list, 20 more grants that, were obvious. These are the ones that I'm most familiar with.
Thanks, Mark.
One question I have with the phases of construction, I assume that obviously the preference would be to start with phase 1 and work the way through phase 8. Do they have to go in order, or is there the ability to do some of them out of sync? Obviously, I can see some of them are interconnected, but is it basically you got to start at step 1 and work your way through to step 8, or are other phases possible to do before phase 1?
So some of them can be done slightly out of sync, but the devil is always in the details. So, this is sort of a master plan. You ultimately, when you get into the design of each of these individual phases, there will be things that, could sort of go either way. But what I always recommend, and how this was, tried to lay itself out, is always building upon what you had done before and never having to backtrack. So never trying to minimize to the maximum extent possible, not having to undo something that you did in an earlier phase when you want to do the next phase. So it's always trying to, see the forest through the trees. You really need to, make sure of what your next step is going to be for the future phases.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Any more questions, comments?
Right now, it's a lot to think about.
It is a lot to think about. It's very nice having this document, though. Very nice.
Hoping there'll be another lottery ticket in Minogues sometimes.
Yeah, right. Hey, well, thank you, Mark.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
You'll get back to us with the technical numbers. That's quite a big difference, I noticed.
We will. It is a big difference. And I think what I'll do is both work with Dan and with some of the vendors that we know. So we happen to work closely with Savvy, which is right close by to you guys when we were doing the work at Universal Preservation Hall. They provide much of this type of equipment, and they could get us some budget numbers that are more accurate relative to Dan's specific list of needs.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just going to jump in. I had a question, Mark, about the grant that you were speaking about with the deadline of April 15th. Could you send over some info about that?
Certainly. And, Aaron Tobin at the Preservation League is really the person that we'd want to touch base with. And, perhaps, what we could do is even have a quick conversation with her, because you have to basically have an upfront conversation that then they'll provide you the actual application. You can't just, there's nothing online. You have to ask and basically tell them what the project is. So, I think, just sort of walking through that and making sure that it's the most likely thing to get funded, is
the Preserve New York grant?
The Preserve New York grant, yes.
So just to push further on that, if we were going to go for that grant and say we wanted to have it pay for a structural engineer to write up a report of the loads, the roof loads or the whole structural sort of integrity of the building. Would we use the master plan as the basis for the grant writing, or would there be a lot more additional writing that would have to be done?
It's a pretty simple application. We could certainly help you with that. We've done quite a few applications, both for the Preserve New York and for the technical assistance grants. I think coming out of the master plan, I think we can take some verbiage out of there that will really sort of target it. So yeah, I think that, that would be the right approach. So yeah, I can send that over in the next, tomorrow, and, maybe, we could try to have a discussion with Aaron, in the very near future, if that's of interest.
I think we should explore it. Definitely. I mean,
Yeah, I
Anyway.
mean, honestly, when you're talking 80% of it being covered by the grant, that's a good deal.
certainly. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you all.
All right, moving on to reports. Superintendent is not here, but I spoke with him and they are in the transition time, transitioning between winter and spring with the trucks, cleaning them out, getting them ready for the spring and putting them, the big plows away for the winter. We did not get information back from about the truck, so in Jess's report, we won't be discussing item number 2 yet. Maybe at the next meeting. But we have not heard back from Morris on the state contract price.
I have a call into their manager who deals with that. I haven't had a response yet.
Oh, good. Thank you. Okay, and Jess, take it away.
Okay. So as usual, I emailed the trial balance to all the board members. And I have 2 resolutions that I need tonight. Number 1, the mayor would like to appropriate unrestricted fund balance to pay for tree maintenance. Resolution is requested to increase expense account A 8560.4 or tree maintenance contractual by $25,000. And then I put the budget entry below.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Is this just a formality mixture of what we need to do to plug the budget?
Yeah, we've almost exhausted our budget for this year already, and we've got a bunch of, the emerald ash borer was brutal. Once I started looking around, we have tons of dead trees that should come down.
Yep.
So,
Thank you.
Poll.
Kim, you're muted.
Kim, you muted.
Are we done with discussion? Should we vote?
Yep.
Okay, Tom,
Yes.
Heidi? Paul,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
and Gary?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so the last resolution, expense account F8320.41 or Clifton Park water purchase has insufficient funds to cover anticipated claims. After discussion with the mayor, resolution is requested to transfer $10,000 from F1440.4 or engineer contractual and $10,000 from F8397.4 capital outlay to increase line item F8320.41 Clifton Park water purchase by $20,000. And then I put the budget entry below.
This was a combination of my under budgeting and people being home and using a heck of a lot more water than anticipated.
Yep.
So resolved.
Second.
Discussion?
What was the budget amount for this, Gary? I know you said you went under. Was it like 50-something thousand?
It was
50,
50,000 that we had budgeted.
yeah.
50. And,
Yep.
and the rates went up last year, was it, or the
The
year
rate did go up too, and
for water purchase? Okay.
yes,
So it's a combination of those two things, like you said.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We'll vote. Tom,
Yes.
Heidi,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes,
Matt,
Yes.
and Gary.
yes.
Just to clarify my comment too, just in case anybody, that our water rates did not go up, but the rate at which we buy water from Clifton Park did go up.
That
Our
is
rates
right.
down last year. So I just want to clarify my comment.
Yeah.
And I have a question. When the water bills, water rents are paid by the end of the year, do we anticipate sufficient funds to pay that money back? Will the water fund be self-supporting?
Oh, yes.
Okay, thank you.
This is coming out of the water.
Yeah, this is water fund.
Yeah, these are all within the water fund. We're not
Within the water
taking it
fund,
from
yep.
the general fund.
Understood, thank you.
All right, animal control, Wireless, Chief. Unmute. There you go.
Oh, are
Yeah.
we good now?
Yeah.
We're good.
Still been moving along. 32 calls last month, so we've still been fairly busy. 25 calls already this month, so things have definitely started picking up with the spring and people being out and around. Actually, brush fires have picked up. We had 3 brush fires over the weekend, which is way more than we had all last summer, so things are really dry out there. Other than that, we're moving along. We're almost 100% vaccinated. We only have, I believe, 2 people that have not completed their vaccinations yet. We've gone back to, holding drills in person rather than Zoom. And other than that, we're going to start working on moving forward with replacing the 3rd Chief's car, the 2010. And I'll work with Jess on whether we're going to do that through the capital reserve or right through our budget for the year that we're in before, June 1st. Any questions?
Frank, are you going to be here for the rest of the meeting? There may be an executive session which you would be invited to attend.
Okay. I'll still be here.
Are we going to do that, or are we still just signing them individually?
Oh, this has to do with threatened litigation.
Oh, okay, all right, I got you.
I was going to say, do you want to do the resolution for the new members? Do that now as part of this section?
Sure.
And 2 from last month, which you still had. I don't know if people had signed those or not.
We could do all 3. We send them all around.
You had 1 from this month, so.
I don't have their names handy.
Kim, all the stuff.
Yeah.
Andrew Proler.
There's a Proler.
There's a Dorsey. There's the one this month is Sam Dorsey.
Yeah.
Remember what the other name was from last month?
Krasiuk.
Something like that, yes.
I mean, I can write it in the resolution. We can just say the 3 new members.
I have them right here.
Oh, you can. Okay.
Sam Dorsey, Andrew Proler, and Adam Krasuski.
Close enough.
Close enough.
Close enough.
We do them all at once?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll make a resolution. We accept the applications, send them on to the fire department.
I'll second.
Discussion?
It's just a point of interest that Andrew Proler, he and his wife used to live in the first firehouse in the village on Troy Ave.
Yeah.
That was kind of cool. Shall we vote?
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Heidi,
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
That's all I got.
Thank you. And Code Enforcement Officer, Peter.
We issued, I guess, 2 building permits to Griffin's Ridge, which is starting to pick up again. They'll be digging a couple of new foundations over there. And same thing with Victoria Landing. There's only one more foundation to pour up there, and they're busy trying to finish off the units up there. And I anticipate they'll be finished by summer, by the end of the summer at Victoria Landing. I don't know if they'll have all units sold, but they'll be finished building. And I had to complete the 2020 code enforcement forms for the Department of State for New York State, which was submitted. I would have presented them, but I'm having many issues with my computer, and so I couldn't print it out. That's about it.
Okay, thank you. Auditorium AP3.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah.
I have a couple of items from our meeting this month. First of all, update on the floors over there. It looks like we finally have 3 bids to do the grinding down. We're just going back and clarifying with a couple of them to make sure they're all consistent, like dust mediation and stuff like remediation and things like that. So it looks like they're in the range of 15,000. And I don't know if I would like to be able to accept one of these this month so we can get the work done. So I don't know if you can authorize that or how you want to manage it.
We did the same kind of thing when it was the post and you kind of had
Right.
a couple of bids and you knew what the low bidder was. And
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not positive what the number is. I'm certain it's less than 20,000. So do you want me to get that information and get back to you before this meeting's over? Or you just want to say, you know, up to 20,000 or?
Well, are we going to have a workshop between now and the next meeting? And
yeah, I think we're trying to. I'm
Yeah.
wondering if you want to do it then.
would that be okay, Lydia?
It's okay by me. I think we're pretty eager to get started, and the lead time on these projects seems to be really long.
Yeah.
But if we can add 2 more weeks to the process, that's not ideal, but that's the best way to do it.
2 weeks or 3 weeks. When's the calendar? We're on the 17th. 2 weeks from now is the 31st, I think.
We have any idea how long the project's gonna take?
Well, which fund would this be coming from?
Oh, gosh, I don't remember.
If we authorize spending.
Yeah,
up
we have to think about
20,000,
that.
We have to know.
Yeah,
Fund.
but I would assume the April meeting looks like it's in the 21st. So we'd probably be having a workshop, at least the week before that or the 7th, which would be the 1st. Can
This
you gather
7th.
the stuff together by the 7th or?
Yeah, I think I can have it together by like tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay, so gonna
Oh.
wait until then?
Would this be coming out of the charitable reserves fund?
I think we have
Gary,
to look
can
at,
we, Gary,
Well,
can we
that's one
authorize-
option and Parkland is the other option, right?
Gary, can we,
right.
since I think it's 3 weeks away, is there any way we can authorize it under one of these funds you said, and if we realize it's the wrong one, have already authorized it in 3 weeks, adjust with another resolution which fund it came out of?
Had a little trouble understanding what you said, but
Okay.
that's what I.
Let me try again. Okay, I was saying that since it's 3 weeks away, the workshop meeting, could we authorize up to 20,000 out of one of the funds you mentioned? And if we then discover in the next few days that it really should have been a different fund, could we have authorized it, but then just in 3 weeks do a resolution to change which fund it came out of?
That's basically what I was getting at.
So it's something that maybe we could do now to save the,
Yes.
okay.
Charitable reserve,
Charitable gifts, yeah.
charitable gift, sorry, charitable
Yeah,
gifts
Jess, is
reserve.
it-
Authorize up to 20,000, you said, Lydia, is good?
Yeah, I'm positive it's less than 20,000.
So moved. Up to 20,000 charitable gift reserve.
Authorize up to 20,000 from capital, no, from charitable.
Charitable gifts reserve.
Charitable gifts reserve, yeah.
Okay, I'll second that.
Second,
Second, okay.
discussion?
Okay.
Lydia, did they say what kind of lead time they thought?
No,
No.
one fellow is like, yeah, we'll get right up there. But one party is the one that did the post work that we thought was going to start right away. And it was like 3 months. So,
Right.
So
Well,
this-
as it gets warmer, that'll be easier to do probably. I would imagine that's part of the equation, but I think passing it now and scheduling them, we just chopped off some time, so that's probably good.
So
Do we
this,
know how
this
long?
resolution will authorize me to sign a contract up to $20,000.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'll put that in the language.
yeah, and you can always hold the contract if you have any reservations about the thing.
If the bids are close in cost, and there's one that can get started relatively quickly and one that won't be able to get started till down the road, I would figure that we could maybe prioritize the person that's able to start sooner if it's close enough. It's
Best value.
Yeah, keep
Yeah.
that in mind.
yeah,
And they'll say that they're the best value because they're getting it done in
Yeah.
our time frame.
right, exactly.
And I'm
Okay.
trying
I don't think it would hurt to put in a penalty provision for late performance.
right.
Good idea.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, how long do we think that this part will take? Because we also have to figure out, I mean, the chairs are obviously not coming in until that's done. So, how are we going to manage all that?
The actual project is supposedly going to be pretty quick.
Oh.
Couple days. So,
All right. Well, let's coordinate chairs then, as soon as we get your guys on board.
okay.
That'd be great.
Wonder if it is.
Yeah, there's the 3 parties we have is the one who did the post work. Peak Environmental, who's never done this work before, but they're very eager to do it. And the group in the firehouse that did the work in the firehouse that came recommended. So, and they have a lot of experience and they own their own equipment. So there's a lot of factors to balance there. But, okay, so that's that. Second item, you guys may have seen Matt circulated something about,
Don't we have to vote?
We have to
Oh,
vote
I
on
thought
that.
you already
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, we have to vote.
Sorry.
Tom,
thank you.
Yes,
Heidi? Are you on mute?
He said yes.
You said yes, yes, thumbs up. Okay, Paul,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
and Gary.
Yes,
Okay.
okay, now, second item, Matt posted something on Facebook about applying to Lowe's for a grant they have for hometown something or other. And I think I would like to take a stab at applying for that. And Matt and I sort of talked about doing the bell tower project. The money available and the number of grants awarded, the math that I did, which is, I'm very bad at math, but it boils down to an average of $100,000 grants. And it's in cash or Lowe's gift cards. The big hitch is that the work has to be done by October. So to do the bell tower project, we'd have to get some engineering work done on that and then hire someone to do the work. I think it could be done, but it would be tight if we got the grant at all. So keeping in mind what Mark said about selecting projects that you don't have to go back and undo, I think that's why this is an appealing possibility, because the tower needs to be stabilized and it won't affect any of the other projects. So if the board's okay with letting me go ahead and see if we can get that, I'd like your support on that.
Please and thank you.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah,
Not
full support and thank.
What'd
Cool.
you say, Heidi?
Didn't we have some engineering done on that about what was required?
On the
Not
bell tower?
official-
Yeah, no?
Just not official, like, just kind of a rough estimate.
Oh,
There's also, I think, 81,000 in Mark's plan for the bell tower. So
Yeah.
there's already some work done on that, so that's good.
Well, we'll see. I mean, probably won't come to anything, but it's certainly worth a try. Okay, the third item is a project that AP3 would like to undertake to, and I know this is stepping into a ring of fire, asking the village what they want to happen with the auditorium. What kind of venue they want it to be, so we can direct our efforts going forward. If they say, we don't want anything to change, leave it exactly as it is, then that's that. If we say we'd like to enhance its use as an event venue, then that's another direction to go in. We talked about how to do that. We've come up with kind of a shell of an idea to send out a survey listing different, a range of options, and then having at least one, probably more workshops to walk through what it would take to get us to those particular places. And even if we don't do anything, what the cost of that would be to not do anything. So I guess the first step is to get the board support for this project and your mailing list so we can send out surveys.
I think it would be a great idea to do a survey. I'd like to see Metallica concerts. No, I'm only kidding.
Well,
Only kidding.
if that's the predominant opinion, that will definitely shape our.
No, I only said that because I know Kim likes heavy metal. But I really think a survey of people in the village would be beneficial, because I think there's a lot of people in the village that have never weighed in on what they'd like to see in the auditorium. And we present, with Adrian's help and Lydia's and others, we are tried and true, things that we do, but who knows what other people might think.
I have a couple, one question, one comment. Comment being, is your idea to sort of present ideas of the types of programs that people would like to see in the village and then have them select, or is it more an idea generation thing where you're soliciting ideas from people in the village about what they'd like to see? So in other words, is it select what's behind each door, or are you looking for it to be more freeform, or some combination of the two?
I think probably most accurate to say some combination of the two. We have an extremely preliminary draft, which I only really just glance at it. Somebody else put it together, but there's several different sort of stages of development with brief descriptors, and there's an other as well. But I think for most people who said, how do you think we should use the auditorium? They just would go, I don't know. So
Right.
If we sort of give the range of possibilities, then that would, I think, help the discussion. And of course, it's not a commitment. Majority is not going to rule on this. It's just to get the discussion going, first of all, to direct our work and to help Adrian sell the place. It doesn't really have an identity right now. And I know that's sort of esoteric, but I think it's pretty fundamental for the kind of programming she's trying to do. And I hope that there's a side benefit of getting a little bit more community investment in, thinking about how we use this community resource. So But having been through one round of surveys with the library proposal, I
Yes.
know this is really tricky shit. So.
You preempted my my comment, which was basically that it needs to be framed around this is although we know it needs to be made abundantly clear that this is more about soliciting input and is not in any way sort of binding, or it's not a vote necessarily. It's just to get ideas and get a pulse of the village, because I agree with you. What happened with oftentimes with these surveys, you get the people that are the squeakiest wheels that are more likely to respond than the people that are just, come see, come saw about it, or, less.
I am exceedingly well aware of that.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
But that's one of the reasons why I think this would be a good project for AP3.
Agreed.
Because we're not, necessarily have to do what anybody says.
Agreed. All right. Thanks.
Yeah,
I'd like to request that you run the survey by the board first.
Sure.
that's what I was going to ask. If we can see a copy, give any thoughts or things we want to add. Okay.
Sure. No, there's just like we had the meeting last week and we discussed this idea, and one of the members came up with like a very loose framework. So obviously needs a little refinement, but Adrian, did you want to add anything to that? I mean, did I capture what we're aiming for? You're on mute, Doll.
Unmute. Sorry. No, totally. You captured all of that. And there are just like, we're sort of living in this like new world about how we use the space as well. And there are interesting opportunities that are like coming up, but I think it's a good time to ask the neighbors and the community members, like, what's your flavor, right? And I think this, it's a good time to do that.
Yep.
Okay, and just, I don't know what the process is for the mailing list. I mean, it's not our mailing list, so maybe Kim, you and I can talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Great.
thanks. That's all I had.
Probably the village should send it out, I'd imagine, rather than getting into giving
On behalf of AP3 or something along those lines. Yeah.
possibly.
In conjunction with,
Pardon, Paul?
in collaboration with AP3. Others could be, both our names on sort of, we're not just sending it for them. In effect, we could jointly send it
Yes.
out.
All
Sure,
right.
you want to do that?
Well, I can imagine some people complaining, saying, how did they get my email? And just trying to avoid.
Well, can I
Sure,
raise my hand?
he just did.
Okay, I just did. So maybe like an online thing, where people can just like click a box or whatever, and we create a thing, there are questions and just collect for, data collection purposes. So sorry, I sound funky. I have a little cold. It's not COVID. But I think, if make it easy for people and make it not like, oh, how did you get my email or whatever, but for people who are engaged and want to be engaged, it's just data collection sounds like a negative, weird word, but I think it's important to get people's input. They might not always like what they get on the other side, but I think we're at a time that is meaningful to understand what people think. So
I agree. I think an online form would be wonderful, but I think when the time comes, you should do a village mailing, whether it's one of your regular mailings, Gary, that says this is going to be here online and here. For those who aren't online, here's a paper copy, so to speak, that you can send in, which then could be added easily the few people who fill out something. We should offer it both ways for sure.
Yes.
Well, we'll figure that out. The hard part is going to be getting the darn thing written up. So,
Right.
okay.
Alrighty, next, paper streets policy. I don't have the resolution in front of me. Does anybody have that?
Gary, you're gonna ask Werlis also, they wanted to report before we leave, reports.
Sure. Peter, that's right. I forgot. Thank you.
Werlis would like to have permission for the, to use the grounds for the Antique Festival on June 26th and June 27th. We're proceeding. We're not sure we're going to have the festival. It's not guaranteed, but we'd like to proceed as if it possibly will come off.
And you're looking for authorization from the board?
To use the grounds.
To use the grounds pending?
Yeah, pending that number one, where the state and the county say it's okay, and we can meet all the guidelines that the state and the county and the village wants us to meet. But we're dealing with food vendors and a promoter that want us to at least start the process. And we look around and we see SPAC is selling tickets. The Saratoga Fair is opened this summer, and the Washington County Fair is open this summer. So we said, they don't know if they're going to be able to do it, but they're certainly gearing up. So we should gear up.
But Tom, how would you suggest that we word that?
That request is granted subject to all legal restrictions.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I think if we use the regular precautions we've used in the past, let them proceed. Yeah,
Someone care to make a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Discussion? Paul?
Tom,
Yes.
Heidi? Paul? Matt?
Yes.
And Gary?
Yes. Sorry about that,
Thank you.
Peter.
Thank you.
And paper streets policy, adopt resolution, does Kim do
So
resolution?
under the resolutions, Gary, it says that we're adopting paper street, water, sewer, social media, and land sale. Is that
Yeah, I just,
all at once?
I lumped it in. I think we,
Okay,
yeah.
I must have an old version here.
So
I think we had to, Tom had made some corrections. I'm not sure now that I've sent
Water
it
and sewer?
around. No, to paper streets. I think I'd sent it not in that big email I sent to all you guys just yesterday, but maybe last week. Tom, do you have the latest paper streets? You just made a couple of very small alterations to it, amended it really.
that version 6.
Paper Street Policy Draft Version 6, you just sent us within the last couple of days.
We took out the reference to parkland deed
Yep.
and put in a specific reference to the two controlling deeds with the dates of the deeds. We added a sentence that says a paper street owned by the village, which is contiguous with the park, comma, or identified by the tax map, comma, deed or resolution is as a park is parkland. To the extent permitted by law, all other paper streets are non-parkland. We added a sentence to the next paragraph. All paper streets are accessible to the public for non-parking purposes. And we attached the chart that we had before, which includes the change that Peck Avenue South is not to be used for parking.
There was one change that I had asked for at the last meeting, which involved 9th Street Middle, which is not parkland, it's village land. And I don't see that changed on the most recent version. Yes.
9th Street Middle.
9th Street Middle, yeah, it's not
And it was
contiguous.
supposed to,
It says parkland used for parking right now, and
Mhm.
it's village land used for
Village
parking.
land. Okay.
Yeah.
I will change that before we adopt and put it into our
Okay.
books.
Okay,
Thank
I've
you.
got that. I've got that chart. I'll send that to you.
Okay, thank you.
So do we have to hold off on adopting that as amended, or do we have to see a new document before we?
Only if
It-
you guys want to.
I believe the document has been circulated with the changes.
Yeah.
And I've read the changes that have been made. So we can pass it tonight.
Okay.
Can we just make sure we get the amended, updated version after this?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're
What
gonna-
I've also been doing, Tom, just so you know, is once we finalize and adopt a new policy, whether it's a re-adopt or a new, is I'm actually putting them on the village website.
Good.
There's a new section under, I think it's just under documents called village policies, and they kind of are landing there as we adopt them. I'm putting them on there too.
That's great. We're more up to date with that than we've ever been.
Yeah.
So well, do we want to go through these one by one, or are we gonna kind of do them as one? Because I think with this one, I think there's corrections to it, so I think we should just do it as a one-off.
Yeah, I think we should do it as a one-off, because I also think that water and sewer, there are some questions about fee structure that we didn't finalize.
Okay, so I'll make a resolution to adopt the paper street policy with Tom's corrections as we received today, and then my minor correction on the chart as it pertains to 9th Street Middle.
Second,
Thank you.
Paul? Discussion? Paul?
Vote, Tom?
Yes.
Heidi?
Yes.
Paul? Matt?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
Cool.
Okay, and Tom, is this where you wanted to go over the EAFs?
I do, and also, my notes from the last meeting don't correspond precisely with two of the comments that Heidi made regarding the proposed local law, one with bathrooms and the other with the definition of parking spot. I don't know whether you want to do the EAF form first, Mr. Mayor, or talk about those two substantive issues.
Do the EAF first.
Okay, the short-term EAF, which has been requested by the County Planning Board, and it already has this in draft form, but the board needs to finalize it, authorize the mayor to sign it. Part one, as far as we're concerned, just has a brief description and states that it is a legislative adoption, and therefore a whole series of questions can be skipped over, thank goodness. Part two is the impact assessment, and there are 11 questions, and each of them has tentatively been marked that there is no impact or a small impact which may occur. The alternative is a moderate to large impact. The draftsperson of this draft did not think that there were any moderate to large impacts for this short-term rental and bed and breakfast legislation. I'm going to go through each of the 11 items, and what I'd like you to do is to speak up if you want to discuss it. If you agree that it's a no impact or small impact, give me a thumbs up so that I can see that as we do this straw poll. The first is, will the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulation? Do you agree that there's, the answer is no, or a small impact may occur?
Yes, I agree, it's no.
Okay, I'm waiting for Tom.
Yes, we have no.
Okay, so I've got thumbs up from everyone.
Yes.
2, will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of use of land? and I have this as small, if at all, and that use would be a very slight increase. Heidi?
Yes.
Okay. 3, will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community? Okay. I've got thumbs up for all 3 of those. 4, will the proposed action have an impact on the environmental characteristics that caused the establishment of a critical environmental area?
They're saying no, right?
Right.
Saying yes, no. Yeah.
I got thumbs up on that. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkway? All thumbs up. Will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy and it fails to incorporate reasonable available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities? All thumbs up. A 2-part question for 7. Will the proposed action impact existing public or private water supplies?
No, I'm assuming.
Public or private wastewater treatment utilities? All thumbs up for that. 8, will the proposed action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources? All thumbs up. 9, will the proposed action result in an adverse change to natural resources? For example, wetlands, water bodies, groundwater, air quality, flora, or fauna, close paren. All thumbs up. 10, will the proposed action result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems? All thumbs up. Will the proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health? All thumbs up. Okay, so it looks as though the impact assessment as written is acceptable to the board. Part 3 is a determination of significance, and it asks us to basically explain. And the one comment that is in there now is the use or intensity of use of land may change in that short-term rentals may increase physical occupancy of existing housing within the village, but any impact is reduced by the requirement of adequate parking. Does everyone agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I got all thumbs up. Does anyone wish to add something to that? I got 2 thumbs down, 3 thumbs down, 4 thumbs down, 5. Okay. Then I would ask someone to move a resolution authorizing the supervisor to execute this document once we're finished discussing this local law.
I'll
Mayor.
authorize the mayor to do that.
Second. Matthew? Discussion?
I seconded Kim.
Discussion? Paul?
Yes.
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Yes. You're on mute, Kim.
I was reading your lips, Kim. Sorry.
Sorry.
I'm not good at
Oh, okay, thank you.
In generating the local law form, I took out the possible redefinition of parking space based on my recollection of the last conversation in which we had spoken about the fact that in getting a special use permit, adequate parking would be determined by the zoning board of appeals during the application process, and that might or might not be a technical parking space. I may have misremembered that. Heidi, do you want to speak to that?
No, I don't remember.
I do remember
Yeah,
that
that,
part.
that was what we had talked about, I believe, was not making a specific thing about parking spaces, but leaving it up to the ZBA to decide what adequate
We
parking.
didn't decide. I just didn't know if we took out the definition completely as defining parking space. Or if, I don't
I thought
remember.
we had changed it to adequate parking, have we not? Or am I remembering that wrong also?
I recall that there is already a definition for a parking space in our zoning code. And we were talking about perhaps modifying that, and that we decided not to do that so that we're not mentioning parking space as a definition at all.
Okay.
But Heidi, if you're not satisfied with that,
No, I
then
think that's fine, because we said this is just, we're going down a rabbit hole with this. And so, yeah, I thought maybe we were just not defining parking space. Adequate parking is adequate parking.
okay. Then the next item had to do with subparagraph I, subparagraph 1, little e. Tenants will have a bathroom separate and apart from that of the owner.
And we took that out.
Last
We
time,
struck- Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Struck that. We removed that. For that.
I'm seeing a nod.
Yes, we did. We removed it.
Okay, so we're going to strike that. Okay, were there any other comments about the existing draft?
I don't know.
Yes, then, because this is a substantive change from what was on the website, that we have a second public hearing on April 17 before we vote.
Which part of the substantive? I'm confused.
Those two changes, I believe, that were not on the website, the ones we just discussed, right, Tom? The parking and the,
Yes,
Those were
After the last public hearing, okay.
and I put this current version into a local law filing form that kind of was sent to the Secretary of State. And so I'll make that change and forward it to you, Kim, and then you can send it on to the County Planning Board together with the now approved and executed environmental assessment form. And I don't think that they're going to require anything else other than that slight change.
So set another public hearing for April 17th at 6:50.
wait 1 second. I believe the next, we have the 7th and the 21st by my calendar. Is that correct?
That sounds familiar.
So we have the 7th is a workshop meeting, 21st is the next village board meeting.
Yeah, 7th and 21st. What about, Tom, what about the change I made the other day saying that if bed and breakfast said in the definition that it requires a special permit, that shouldn't it also say that in the short-term rental definition?
Yes, I added that as well. That wasn't a substantive change.
Okay,
So that would not have required a new meeting, but that was a good suggestion. I put it in.
all right, okay.
Is there any preference as to whether we do this on the 7th or the 21st?
The 21st, because we're going to appoint ourselves lead agency
That's
tonight,
right.
and we need 30 days for that.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
So I'll make a, okay.
6:45?
Yeah, make a resolution to have a public meeting, public hearing regarding the changes to the short-term rental law at 6:45 on the 21st of April.
Second,
Tom seconded, I think.
We designate ourselves lead agency again here.
That's coming up.
Okay. Discussion?
all eye on the public hearing setting?
Aye.
Okay. Just going back, I think we skipped over the rest of those policies. I'm wondering about water, sewer, and reviewing those in a workshop, just because it's going long tonight, and there were some things to dig in on those about
Yes.
with regard to fees.
Yes.
So I know that social media was like basically unchanged, Matt, except for yours and Heidi's suggestion to add that disclaimer on the website
Yes.
for social media. And I think Tom Bergen, you said that land sale, you were looking at land sale, and I don't know if you had any substantive changes to that.
No, I was just a little, there was a quirk with it that I thought was interesting because we were going to sell the land to the highest bidder. And yet, if we were going to specifically target some particular person who we thought should buy the land, and I'll use Matt as an example before he was on the board. You know, what happens if somebody else came in and bought and bid higher on that, and then owned that particular piece of property that was right in front of Matt's house?
Mhm.
You know, we'd really have no choice. And I don't know, obviously it was a small piece of land, and I think they're all going to be small pieces of land, but you wouldn't be able to do anything with it. But let's say it was a large enough piece of land where you could put a billboard up or a garage.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's quirky. We're asking for the high bidder, but we're really targeting a specific landowner to help out.
Are we obligated to sell to the highest bidder, Tom?
Yes.
There you have it.
Somewhere I read, when I was looking into things on paper streets, I'm sure I read somewhere, I don't know if it's a law or not, that if you divide up, sell a paper street, you have to offer it to the neighboring, like half each to two homes on either side, one or the other, or half each. Does that sound all familiar to anyone?
You kind of broke up, Paul.
He was saying, if you're going to offer that, do you also have to offer it to the surrounding adjacent neighbors?
I thought the paper streets have to be divided up among the houses adjoining it, as opposed to the higher bidder.
I think, I don't know if Paul and I are on the same page, but the idea, is it possible to only sell it to somebody whose property is contiguous to the piece of land that's in question? Is that kind of what you said, Paul? Because that was kind of my.
Yeah, but I thought that was in the law already. That would be divided amongst them. I'm thinking that way.
I'm just reading the.
Let me see if I can.
My recollection is that we have had at least a policy in the past where we make sure that we directly notify those people who have real property contiguous to the land being sold, but not that we were going to favor them in any way. The board has a fiduciary responsibility to the village to obtain the highest possible price.
Okay, so there's no
All
way.
right, I don't know where can you hear me better now, by the way? I went to the,
Yes.
I think my battery was running out. No, I was sure I had read somewhere, I'm just not sure whether there was a law or not, that neighbors, that a paper street between properties would be divided equally between the properties if turned over, if we gave it up.
Well,
But
item
that may
three.
not have been a law.
Item
Hmm?
3 says, upon receipt of the planning board's recommendation, the board shall make a determination as to whether it would be in the greater interest of the residents and landowners of the village for the property to be sold, retained as non-parkland by the village, or retained as parkland by the village.
Yeah, I'm referring to something that's old, that has nothing to do with what we're doing now, that I read that was a previous law. I thought I read when researching that we already had in the books this thing about splitting it, because I was thinking about this land here between, well, whatever, there's a piece near behind my house that I share with Heidi that's anyway. Doesn't matter. I just thought that there was already a rule or a law about it has to go to the neighbors. But I may well have just not read that, or it might not have been a law.
Urban legend.
Village legend.
It could just be what I read that was done in the past sometime, you know. It was.
So, Tom, am I right in understanding that we cannot restrict the sale of the property to only those that hold it contiguous? It has to be offered to everybody? Is that by law?
That is my understanding of the law. We have to get the highest price.
But could it be the highest price among three contiguous landholders? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I think if we had a law that involved the discretion of one of the village boards to determine whether there was a public interest in a particular conveyance, and that public interest was greater than the dollar amount that was involved. I'm not aware there's any legal support for this, but that's an argument that I would be glad to take to court. That we'd be able to weigh the public interest and not just the dollars.
Okay. To Tom's point, I think like the billboard, Tom Bergen's point, the billboard idea is not probably very likely, but there could be a neighborly dispute where, you know, somebody from across town that dislikes somebody else is going to buy that piece of property and use it to, you know, be a nuisance, for instance. You know, so I think I could see it. Yeah,
if you use it to park vehicles on, oh, I got extra vehicles, I'm gonna buy this strip on your property and just park my vehicles along it.
Yeah, like if I happen to find out so-and-so's, you know, want this little piece of strip of land, I could theoretically, you know, from across the village, purchase it to be a nuisance. So that would be this sort of thing that I would foresee happening in our tiny village. But there would be some. It'd be nice to there to be some outlet for us to have some discretion about it.
I think the safety valve that is unquestionably legal is that we would decide we do not want to sell that parcel.
Okay.
That's a good idea. Yeah. In the past,
just a fast aside, under the new bulk regulations, accessory structure, a garage, let's say, you need 7,000 square feet. The lot is a lot more than a paper street has.
Right. But
yeah, but going back to what Matt said, you could to try to undermine someone, you could get a piece of property and stick your your RV there.
Yeah.
I remember years ago we sold a sliver of property, that public property that ran under somebody's existing front porch, and I think it was right over by the auditorium somewhere. In theory, somebody else could have bought that and owned that person's sliver of their porch.
Right.
You know, always expect the unexpected, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think Tom's idea is a great idea.
How should we word that, Tom, about, you know, the board's discretion as to what would we say?
I think it's already in the land use policy.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, that at any point up to and including the night of the auction, the board can determine not to.
Oh, okay.
go
Okay.
through.
I thought it said, should the board decide to sell the property, it shall be sold to the highest bidder. So, and you know, to me, that the verbiage, and I could be wrong, it means like if we make the decision to go ahead with the sale, that once people bid on it, that we're locked in. But I don't know if I'm reading that correctly or
And
not.
on the night of the auction, the board retains the absolute right to exercise. its
Okay, I'm
discretion
sorry. Yeah,
not
you're
sell
right.
the
Yeah.
property.
I
Okay.
think we have that safety valve firmly in the policy.
Okay.
written.
All
Okay.
right.
All right.
Okay.
My fault. I should have read the rest of the paragraph.
I'd like to ask a question on the land sale policy number 3, when it says The board's going to determine whether it's in the greatest interest to sell the property retained as non-parkland or retained as parkland. Does that make it sound as if we would sell parkland?
Well, there's a whole process if you want to sell parkland.
Right, I know, but so I don't know why it says retained as non-parkland by the village or retained as parkland. Do you want to say instead of retained, are we talking about in this instance that you would be you would be adding it to the parkland deed? No, that you'd be creating parkland?
Yes.
Okay, so that, because retained as parkland, to me makes it sound like we were almost about to sell parkland.
Well, there's no way we can do that. That's one of the very clear, absolute black letter restrictions.
Okay, just as long as it's fine, it's clear to everyone else, you know.
Yeah, converted might be a better word, but yeah, I mean, it's
How about, can we change the wording?
Why don't we make that change?
converted to parkland by the village.
Yes. There, I think that's totally clear.
Yeah.
Instead of retained.
Yes,
Yes.
Okay.
converted to parkland by the village.
Very good.
Amend it. Edit.
Okay.
Okay.
Is everybody comfortable with adopting that now with that minor edit, or do people want to chew on it more? Because I'm comfortable passing it or adopting it.
Yes.
I am too, yeah.
Okay. I'll make a resolution to adopt the land use policy then,
Second,
with that minor edit.
You want to do social media at the same time since
Yeah,
kind of good that, yeah.
and social media.
yep. I'll second that also. It's pretty simple.
All right, thanks, guys.
Oh,
Tom,
Yes.
Heidi, Paul,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
and Gary.
yes.
So I'll make those edits and then I'll upload those policies to the website too.
And you're just gonna put the disclaimer at the bottom of the homepage
Yeah.
as well?
I
Okay,
have to go
cool.
back and see what you wanted me to say though, because I forgot.
Just a hyperlink to the disclaimer, that's all. Yeah.
All right, unless I'm mistaken, we are on change order for Stilsing Electric, which was sent around.
That one can just be read, yeah. Straight
Yeah.
from the resolutions.
Pardon?
That one can just, if someone wants to read that straight from the resolutions, they can.
No.
It's on the bottom,
Oh,
the last one.
I don't have that.
I'll read it. I got it right here. Whereas Stilsing Electric is supplying the spray aeration treatment module for the water tower as part of the water system improvements, and whereas Stilsing Electric has requested to modify the contract documents to include construction of propane piping from the new tank to the building as needed to supply the new emergency generator in change order number 1. And whereas this change order for $3,691 is in addition to the original contract amount of $192,000, therefore be it resolved that the Round Lake Board of Trustees authorizes the payment of change order number 1.
Second,
Discussion? Paul?
Tom,
Yes.
Heidi, Paul,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
and Gary.
Yes.
Is there a contingency on that contract for change orders?
I don't know.
Well, typically there would be.
You have to go back to the original bid docs, I think, to see that.
It's either gonna, would be 10% or 15%.
This is about 2%, I think.
Yeah, right. It's low. It should well fit in.
All righty. Next, set public hearing for budget workshop.
I guess the 7th and, oh, wait, I'm sorry. we're gonna do that in May, or are we gonna do that in April?
April, yeah. Should we do it the same night as the other public hearing? Do a public hearing and a workshop at the same time?
On the budget?
I don't know. Or do you want a different day?
Can we squeeze the budget workshop in on the?
I don't think it'll be terribly. There are no changes from the for the tax rate or water or sewer rates.
No,
They're all
and it's
the same.
yeah, there's no controversy there. I mean, you know, there may be some questions, just informational or clarify things, but
I know we had talked about the water and sewer stuff. We were gonna talk about that on April 7th. I mean, was there anything else we were going to add to that? Because if there's not a lot of meat on the bones there, it may make sense to incorporate the budget workshop into that. And we could just start the public hearing at 7 and then just continue on from there. Or, you know, 6:45. I don't know, whatever. That's my thought.
Just for the record, I don't think I'm going to be able to be at the 7th.
Okay. All right. So let's do the 17th.
A yearly conference.
So we're already at 6:45.
Is that somebody talking?
So, you know, I don't have to be there. I'm just saying that if that's a problem, I probably am not going to be at the 7th.
Well, not every trustee has to be at a workshop.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have all the information already, and I'll keep you all updated
Okay.
if things change. So, want to keep it at the 7th?
Is it okay to do it at 7 o'clock? Or does it have to be predate? I mean, because we can just roll right into, you know, if we're going to do the first one at 6:45, we can do the budget at 7 and then just start the regular meeting as soon as the budget workshop's finished. Can we do that?
I don't think there is, because we're gonna do water and sewer policy, right.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
The 7th.
Okay, what's at 6:45 on the 7th?
I'm sorry. You're right. 6:45 is the 17th. Yeah.
Right.
21st.
I had it in my head. Yeah, the 20th. Oh, this meeting's going on. You're right. Sorry, 21st. Now I got the 17th in my head, Tom.
We're in our third hour.
Yes, I know. All right. So let's just do it at 6:45 on the 7th then. And then start the regular meeting right after. That's a resolution.
Right. So this is it's not a public hearing, it's a workshop, a budget workshop, right?
Yeah.
Okay. 6:45 p.m. And then are we having a standard workshop starting at 7, basically? Okay.
For the policies, yeah.
Yeah.
okay, so I'll second that.
Second? Okay, thanks. All aye on that?
Aye.
Okay, Gary has asked me to drag us back to the agenda. And there is a resolution in the draft resolutions, Kim, that you circulated regarding local law number 2, which is the short-term rentals.
Yeah.
And I'd like to get some board action on that. Do you want to read that, Kim?
I don't have it. One of you guys are gonna have to read it.
I can read it unless anybody else has it in front of them and prefers to read it. No? Okay. It's local law number 2, right, Tom?
Yes.
Okay. You want me to read the whole thing, right? Whereas the Board of Trustees of the Village of Round Lake wishes to adopt a local law amending Chapter 180 zoning of the Round Lake Village Code to regulate the operation of short-term rentals and bed and breakfasts. And whereas the proposed local law has been submitted to the Saratoga County Planning Board for its review and recommendation. And whereas a public hearing was held on the 17th of March, 2021 at 6:30, at which time all persons wishing to be heard were heard. Now, therefore, it is resolved that the Village Board of Trustees designated itself lead agency for the purposes of administration of the Seeker Act 6 NYCRR 617.6B with respect to the project. And it is further resolved that the Village Board of Trustees finds that the project is a type 1 action as defined by 6 NYCRR 617.4B2, and accordingly, a draft environmental assessment form, parts 1, 2, and 3, has been prepared and reviewed by the Village Board pursuant to 6 NYCRR 617.2M and 617.7, And it is last resolved that the public comments are with respect to the proposed amendments are hereby solicited, and those received by the village clerk will be circulated to the village's trustees and mayor prior to April's Board of Trustees regular meeting for review and discussion.
Second?
Second,
Discussion? Paul?
yes.
Tom? Heidi?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
And Gary?
Yes.
Okay, and then Gary wanted me to drag us back to the bulk regulations. And there is also a draft short environmental assessment form. And again, part one simply says it's legislative. So we skip to part two, impact assessment. And what I'd like to do this time, since we just went through this for something else, and it's all fresh in your mind, I'm going to read through the sections here, and I want anybody to stop me who does not agree with the tentative assessment that there is no or a small impact which may occur. Does anybody object to that procedure?
No.
Okay. And all the questions start with, will the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulation, result in a change in the use or intensity of land, impair the character or quality of this existing community, have an impact on the environmental characteristics that cause the establishment of a critical environmental area, result in adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect the existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkway, cause an increase in the use of energy, or the project fails to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities, impact existing public or private water supplies or public or private wastewater treatment utilities, impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources, result in adverse changes to natural resources, e.g. wetlands, water bodies, groundwater, air quality, flora, or fauna, result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage, or lastly, create a hazard to environmental resources or human health. Again, all of those have been marked no or small impact may occur. Does everyone agree with that conclusion for all of those items? Waiting for Heidi. Okay, I get a thumbs up on all of those. And then on part three, determination of significance, there has been no additional comment added given the proposed project. And that's for the bulk regulations. So can I have someone read the draft resolution that was circulated by Kim regarding draft resolutions, regarding bulk regulations?
The local law number 3, I mean, can I just say it's identical to the previous one, except we're doing differentiate between the setback and height limitations in certain zones, or do I have to read the whole thing? It's identical to the law 2 that I just read, except that one.
I would either read or summarize the whole thing.
Okay. Yeah, whereas the Board of Trustees of the Village of Round Lake wishes to adopt a local law amending Chapter 180 of the Round Lake Village Code to amend its table of bulk regulations to differentiate between setback and height limitations in certain zones for principal structures versus accessory structures. And whereas the proposed local law has been submitted to Saratoga County Planning Board for its review and recommendation, whereas a public hearing was held on the 17th of March at 6:45 p.m. and everybody who wished to be heard was heard. We resolved that we designate ourselves lead agency for the purposes of seeker, same part that I read earlier with respect to the project. It's further resolved that the Village Board of Trustees finds that the project is a type 1 action as defined by the laws that I read earlier. And it's resolved that the public comments are with respect to the proposed amendments hereby solicited, and those received by the village clerk will be circulated to village trustees and mayor prior to April's Board of Trustees regular meeting for review and discussion.
Second,
Second.
discussion? Paul?
Paul, Tom,
Yes.
Heidi, Paul,
Yes.
Yes.
and Gary. Okay.
And website and social media policy was brought up, but I don't recall that there was a vote on it.
The social media policy we did with the land sale policy, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any correspondence?
No correspondence.
Approval of minutes?
We forgot to approve a public hearing we had in January, from January 20th. So we should do that one first.
Okay. Motion?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
discussion? Paul?
All aye?
Aye.
Okay. And the second was from February
17.
17th. Yep.
Motion?
So moved.
Second? Somebody move.
Second.
Tom?
Okay. All
discuss-
aye?
Aye.
And approval of abstract in the amount of $327,693.25.
So moved.
Second,
Second. Yeah.
discussion?
All aye?
Aye.
And village attorney?
Um,
Any words of wisdom?
Yes, I would, I don't know about words of wisdom, but I'll report that the transfer of property from Belmonte Builders to the village has been completed and filed, and that's now of record. Secondly, there's been a claim by La Rosa Automotive Inc. against the village of Round Lake, and I would request an executive session with that, and that Frank participate as an advisor to the board.
Okay. Village mayor is all talked out. Trustees?
I just wanted to bring out one thing. I was gonna hope that maybe in June, we could figure out a way to hold these meetings in the community room or the auditorium and open some windows, open some doors, and at least for a couple of months, try to get back to normal.
I suspect we should be able to do that pretty easily.
Yeah.
Perhaps in May.
Yep, I'll leave it to you guys, but just a thought.
I have no objections.
Anyone else? Okay, public comment, and then, okay, public comment.
I think we've warned most people out.
Yeah, we've lost most of the public.
I think Emily's falling asleep over there.
I'm
Emily,
still here.
Yeah.
thank you, Emily.
You keep us going. Okay, and a motion to enter executive session for the purpose of discussion of pending litigation.
So moved.
Threatened litigation,
Pardon?
So moved.
threatened litigation.
Threatened little litigation.
So threatened. I mean, so moved.
Second
Second.
discussion. Alrighty.
All right, so Emily's got to go.
Bye, Emily.
She's
He's
gone.
gone.
All right.
All right, and let me see, this is at 2:54, so that I can edit this out of the video. Alrighty, we are now in executive session. Tom, take it away.
Okay, I'm responding to several letters I've received from an attorney, Robert LaRosa, who is the brother of Tom LaRosa, who runs LaRosa's Automotive Inc. And about this time last year, we began speaking with that entity regarding ordering and installing items to trucks that we had on order, one or more trucks that we had on order. I believe an F-150, I'm not sure what else. In any event, there are email chains, and the email chains indicate that they wanted assurance that we were going to use them before they ordered parts, and we indicated that that we would be using them. The parts that were going to be used, we changed some. We decided that some we were going to purchase ourselves and deliver. But at one point, when we said we want to do that, they indicated they had already ordered the parts and received the parts and paid for the parts, and that we were on the hook for them. And so there has been a disagreement as to whether or not we, the fire department, has entered into an enforceable contract. The amount in controversy is less than $10,000. They have a pretty strong argument that they reasonably relied on what we said to buy those parts. On the other hand, when you're dealing with a municipality, there are certain formalities that have to be used, and you deal with the municipality at your peril to make sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. On the third hand, I think that they were, a reasonable person would have believed that we had authorized them to order those parts on our behalf. And it might be a little ugly if we were then to say, whoops, we changed our mind and you're stuck with them. I don't know how this is going to shake out, but what I am asking the board is whether or not the board wants to authorize the mayor, in consultation with Rob Gizzi, who's the one who was in the greatest amount of communication with LaRosa, and Frank, who is our fire department, and me, to have the authority to try to knock out a settlement of this claim, or whether the board wants to be the one to make the determination of whether this claim is paid.
Could I ask a couple of questions?
Yes.
And I don't know if Frank is listening or can hear me.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Do we use these people regularly?
No.
Well, no, because we don't normally do this. This was on the two new vehicles.
Okay.
And I don't know if Tom's talked to Rob Gizzi or not, because I never talked to LaRosa. Rob handled all the arrangements from the times that we started looking at the cars till we got them in and everything else.
And this is young Rob.
Young Rob, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I did speak with young Rob. We went through everything that he recalled, and he provided me with copies of all of the correspondence, email correspondence that he had in his possession. And so I put together a little timeline of some of the things that are some of the communications that took place. And again, I can circulate it to the board if the board wants to be the one to kind of resolve this issue, or I'll deal with it with the mayor making the decision, again, in consultation with Rob and Frank and me, if the board wants to do that. I'm looking for a decision by the board as to procedurally how we want to go about resolving this issue. It seems perhaps a little clunky for the entire board to be involved, but you tell me what you want to do.
I have to, this may be a silly question. These parts are non-returnable. Is that, I mean,
Well, that's what they, see, the problem was, of course, a year ago, everything stopped.
right.
We had ordered the vehicles and then we were told production stopped. And they didn't know if they were going to ever give them to us at that point, because nobody knew a year ago what was going to happen.
Mhm.
And they basically told us we didn't know if we were going to be getting the vehicles or not. I believe Rob told them, you know, to hold off because we don't know what's going on.
Mhm.
He told him at that point, well, they already ordered the parts. And at that point, we didn't know if we were going to get the vehicles or not, but they said we were liable for the parts, which are basically lights, sirens, that type of stuff that goes on the vehicles. And they told him at that point, well, we ordered them, they're yours. And they said that, you know, they couldn't return them.
Yeah, I smell a little bit of a rat personally. I mean, it strikes me as very odd that they wouldn't be able to return any of the equipment at all. I might, you know, it might be, I mean, it wasn't produced specifically for.
No, they're just general stock parts. And then one of the things that we found out after the fact was they didn't deal in state contract. So,
Right.
and you know, that may be fine for a private organization, but like Tom said, we have to go by state contract basically.
Yeah.
And, you know, they said they couldn't go by state contract because they didn't deal with state contract. That's when we started looking for somebody else. But they said, you know, too bad, even though we didn't know if we were ever going to get the vehicles, we ordered the parts.
I just feel like
And
maybe they
normal-
had their cake and ate it too, you know?
Probably on a normal basis, we could have worked things out and done something. But again, last year, everything was just shut down and we didn't even have any communication with them, I don't believe, for months at a time because, you know, nothing was going on. But again, Rob can give the details to Tom because he had all the phone conversation. I've never spoken to him, emailed them. They've never called me. Rob's told them, you know, you got to call me. They've never called me or anything like that. Just all of a sudden, Tom got a letter, you know, from their lawyer.
What's the status with the vehicles? Are these vehicles we got or are
The
getting?
Chief's car and the pickup that we got 3 months ago. I think it's been about 3 months now that we've had the vehicles.
We already got the
We
parts
had towards the
elsewhere,
end of last year.
but they already have the parts on them. We got them with the
We already
parts.
went to somebody else.
Oh, yeah.
Is it,
Somebody else that dealt with state contract and the price was thousands of dollars cheaper.
Tom, is it possible that they've returned these and they're just trying to bilk us for some extra money? I mean, it just seems beyond belief that the stock parts would not be returnable, or at least with a restocking fee. It just seems,
That's not the impression I get.
so they still have these parts sitting in the back of their
I
garage?
believe they still have the parts somewhere. We haven't seen them, but they said they have them.
And they'd have to give them to us if we settled with them, so
And then
we
we'd
could
have
try
to
to
get
sell
them.
them elsewhere.
And then we arranged to try to sell them to another dealer, to buy them back from us, or again, I just said we're gonna buy another car. It would be more expensive, but we could take part of those parts and put them on the new car. And the parts that were ordered for the pickup truck that we got in, we'd have to try to, you know, sell off to somebody else.
Or we could save them in case something goes wrong with one of our parts, I suppose, as a replacement.
Something like that, right?
So it seems to me that if we can give back some of those parts and pay a restocking fee, that might be a good resolution. If we can use others, that might be a good resolution.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of detail that might go back and forth in resolving a fairly small claim. And that's why I wanted to know whether this board wants to be part of all those discussions or whether it wants to authorize the mayor
There's a
to
lot of.
settle this matter.
Yes.
Thumbs and heads.
Yes.
But just have your skeptical hat on, Gary, please. That's all I ask.
I agree with you. It sounds like nonsense.
If
Yeah.
that,
Is this a local company?
They're in Schenectady.
Activity.
They do
Gary,
a large number of vehicles for fire departments.
and Gary, we do not
This
want to
were the
mount
first
these.
ones.
We don't want to mount these on our new village golf cart. We don't need to do
That was my next.
Put some red lights and sirens on the golf cart for Gary to drive down the street.
I'm looking for a resolution then that authorizes the mayor to settle the claim for an amount of $9,000 or less
which should take care of, I think, anything that will come our way.
Do we have to do that in public session?
No.
So
Okay, I'll make
resolved.
the
Oh,
resolution.
wait a
No,
minute.
you
That
can't spend money in-
authorizes the expenditure of money.
Yeah.
I stand corrected. Yes, it does have to be done in public session. Thank you.
So are we sufficiently in agreement that we should go back into regular session and just authorize this transaction or this settlement?
Yes.
Okay. I'll
And
make a motion.
Tom, I
I'm
was gonna
sorry.
say, Tom, I would hope you would word it so we don't say the wrong thing in public session. If you word it, I'll be glad to propose a resolution.
Selective call, frequency 1, vibrate.
I'll make a motion. We go back into regular session.
Second,
Second.
discussion, poll,
Yes.
Yes.
yes. All
Okay.
right.
I'm looking for a resolution to authorize the mayor to settle a claim from
DeRosa,
La Rosa Automotive, Inc. In a sum of $9,000 or below in his discretion in consultation with the fire chief, the assistant chiefs as needed, and the village attorney.
So moved.
Second. I think Heidi got it in time.
discussion. Poll,
All right. Tom,
Yes.
Heidi, Paul,
Yes.
Matt, and
Yes.
Gary.
yes.
Okay, Gary and Frank, I'm going to circulate the summary that I put together of communications with the two of you and Rob. And then Gary, if you can let us know when it would be convenient for us to sit down together and we can go through this and you can make your determination.
All righty.
Yeah, Gary,
can you
do like
spell-
late in the day because I think Rob works until 3:30. So
Okay.
it would have to be around 4:30 in the afternoon. I'll find out exactly.
All right, we can work around his schedule and Tom's. I'm free all the time.
Me too.
Did you say La Rosa, LAROSA?
Capital L, capital R, yes.
Got it. Okay.
And at long last, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
I'll
moved.
move.
We all.
Everyone moves it.
Fourth.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
all.
Thank you.
Good night, John Boy.
Aye.
I.
Aye, aye.
Oy vey.